My son said I was a burden on their budget, so I bought their apartment. Now they pay me rent. They say the most painful wounds are inflicted by those we love most. I never understood that truth until my own child saw me as nothing but a financial solution. A burden, disposable. But sometimes, when you've been pushed to your breaking point, you discover a strength you never knew existed. This is my story of betrayal, awakening, and reclaiming my dignity, one calculated move at a time. Like, subscribe and comment where you're watching from. My story might just change how you see your own. The lid wouldn't budge. My swollen fingers strained against the child-proof cap of my arthritis medication as pain shot through my joints. 5 years a widow, and simple tasks like opening pill bottles had become my daily Everest. Come on, I muttered, tears of frustration welling in my eyes. The phone rang, mercifully interrupting my battle with the bottle. My son David's name flashed on the screen. I composed myself before answering. Mom? How are you feeling today? His voice carried that forced cheerfulness I'd come to recognize, the tone he used when he wanted something. Oh, you know, good days and bad. I finally pried the cap off, sending pills scattering across the kitchen counter. Listen, Mom, I've been thinking. Since Dad passed, you've been all alone in that house, and now with your arthritis getting worse. I froze, pills forgotten. 5 years since Robert died, and David had rarely mentioned my declining health. Rachel and I were talking, he continued, and we think you should move in with us. The offer hung in the air like a fragile soap bubble. My son, inviting me to his upscale Cambridge apartment he shared with Rachel, his wife of 3 years. It's a big place, and having you close by would be great. Plus, we could help with your medical appointments, medications. I don't know, David. That's a big change. I glanced around my modest, suburban Boston home, filled with 40 years of memories. Mom, be practical. You're alone with a progressive condition. What happens if you fall? If you can't drive yourself to appointments? His voice tightened. Besides, we could use a little help with the utility bills. Win-win. There it was, the real motivation bleeding through his concern. You're having financial problems? I asked quietly. Just a rough patch. The economy, you know. But that's not why. I'll think about it, I interrupted, suddenly exhausted. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table, watching winter light cast long shadows across the room. Robert had always handled our finances, investments, retirement planning, taxes. I'd managed daily expenses and bill payments, an arrangement that suited us both. After his death, I'd kept the status quo, having our accountant, Mr. Peterson, handle anything complicated. Robert had chosen Peterson carefully decades ago, not just a standard accountant, but a financial manager specializing in estate planning and investment management for high-net-worth individuals. I'd never questioned why we needed someone with such expertise when we lived so modestly, assuming it was just Robert's thoroughness. 2 days later, I called David back. I'll do it, I said, ignoring the strange hesitation in his response. I contacted a real estate agent, started sorting through 40 years of accumulated possessions, and officially put my home on the market. The real estate market was slow that winter, but I was hopeful. I kept sentimental items in a small storage unit and sold some furniture I wouldn't need. The day I moved in, Rachel greeted me with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. The apartment was beautiful. Modern furnishings, floor-to-ceiling windows, prime Cambridge location. At 34, Rachel carried herself with the polish and confidence of someone accustomed to the finer things. As David, now 36, carried my suitcases to the guest room, I caught Rachel watching me, her expression calculating. "We're so happy to have you," she said, her voice at odds with her cold eyes. That night, as I arranged my medications on the nightstand, I found myself wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. Something in Rachel's demeanor sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the January frost coating the windows. What I didn't know then was that I hadn't just moved into their home, I'd stepped into a trap of their making. The first week felt like a dream. I cooked elaborate dinners, scrubbed countertops until they gleamed, and even fixed the leaky bathroom faucet, ignoring how each twist of the wrench sent pain shooting through my wrists. David seemed genuinely appreciative, but Rachel maintained a polite distance, offering tight smiles that never reached her eyes. Sunday afternoon, David left for what he called an emergency work meeting. I decided to prepare his favorite beef stew, Comfort food for a cold January day. Opening the refrigerator, I froze in confusion. All the groceries I'd purchased yesterday had been rearranged, hidden behind labeled containers marked, "Rachel, do not touch." Looking for something? Rachel's voice startled me. I turned, forcing a smile. Just getting ingredients for dinner. About that, she crossed her arms. We need to establish some boundaries, Margaret. This apartment was already cramped for 2 people. I'm sorry? The food you bought yesterday? That's premium organic beef. We can't afford to eat like that regularly. Her tone was measured, each word a calculated wound. You're a guest here, Margaret. You should be more economical. The air left my lungs as though she'd physically struck me. I was just trying to contribute. By spending our money on luxury ingredients? Her eyebrow arched. If you want to contribute, stick to the budget brands in the left cupboard. And please label your food. Organization is important in small spaces. That night, I ate a dry sandwich alone in my room while the aroma of Rachel's cooking, using my ingredients, wafted under the door. When David returned, I heard their laughter floating down the hallway. The next morning, I attempted to discuss the incident with David as he rushed to leave for work. Rachel's just particular about her space, he muttered, avoiding my eyes. Give her time to adjust. David, she called me a guest. I thought this was supposed to be my home now, too. He checked his watch. Mom, please. She's under a lot of stress at work. We both are. He kissed my cheek. It'll get better, I promise. But it didn't get better. Each day brought new subtle humiliations. The thermostat in my room was programmed to shut off at midday when I needed it most for my joint pain. My clothes mysteriously disappeared from the building's laundry room, only to reappear days later in odd places. 3 weeks after moving in, I decided to refinish an old wooden chest to brighten my sterile room. I set up my project on the balcony, carefully laying out sandpaper and paint. Rachel returned from work early, her eyes narrowing at my project. What's this? Just sprucing up this old chest, I explained. I checked the condo rules. Small projects are permitted. This terrace is for plants only, she said sharply. And honestly, Margaret, that shabby box doesn't match our aesthetic. David's too nice to say it, but your little projects make our home look like a thrift store. That evening, I watched from my window as Rachel and her friends enjoyed cocktails on the same terrace. When I mentioned the contradiction to David, he sighed heavily. Mom, you know how Rachel is about decorating. This is her home, our home. We all need to adjust. The emphasis on our told me everything I needed to know. I was an outsider here, my presence merely tolerated. As I lay in bed that night, my arthritis flaring from stress, my real estate agent called with more bad news, no offers on my house yet. I was trapped between 2 worlds, with nowhere to truly call home. But even then, I had no idea how much worse things would get, or that my breaking point was just around the corner. As January gave way to February, the small cruelties multiplied. I noticed the air conditioning in my room shut off automatically during the afternoon, precisely when my medication caused uncomfortable hot flashes. When I asked David about it, he looked confused. It must be a programming error in the smart home system, he said, but never fixed it. I began finding my blouses and sweaters missing from the laundry room, only to discover them days later stuffed behind machines or in rarely used storage bins. Oh, someone must have moved them when they needed the machine, Rachel explained with an unconvincing smile when I confronted her. The third major humiliation came when I tried adjusting to my diminished space by finding small ways to make it mine. I'd found an old wooden chest in a thrift store and decided to refinish it. I set up carefully in the corner of the terrace, laying out sandpaper and brushes. I was just applying the first coat of blue paint when Rachel returned early from work. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice tight. "Just a small project to brighten my room," I explained. "I put down tarps so there's no mess." She shook her head slowly. "Margaret, this terrace is for plants only. It's in the condo bylaws." I checked the rules, I countered. "Small personal projects are permitted as long as—" "Look," she interrupted. "This isn't just about rules. David might be too polite to say it, but your DIY projects make our home look downscale. We have colleagues over sometimes. Appearances matter." That evening, I watched through my window as Rachel hosted friends on the terrace for wine and cheese. They laughed and chatted exactly where my prohibited project had been. When I mentioned this to David, he sighed heavily. "Mom, Rachel is very particular about our home. She works in design, remember? This is stressful for all of us. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I'm trying to adjust, David, but I feel like a trespasser here. Just give it time, he said, squeezing my shoulder before checking his watch and hurrying off to another meeting. Later that week, my real estate agent called with unwelcome news. The market's still slow, Margaret. We might need to lower the asking price significantly. That night, I called Eleanor, my oldest friend who was traveling across the country in her new RV. I downplayed my situation, embarrassed to admit the full truth. It's just an adjustment period, I told her, staring at the ceiling of my increasingly prison-like room. Margaret Wilson, I've known you for 40 years. What aren't you telling me? Eleanor's voice crackled through the phone. It's nothing. Really, I insisted, unwilling to speak the humiliating truth aloud. My own son and his wife saw me as a burden, a convenient solution to their financial troubles, not as family. As I hung up, I caught sight of myself in the mirror, shoulders hunched, expression defeated. I barely recognized the woman staring back. Where was the Margaret who had taught high school English for 30 years, who had stood up to difficult administrators and challenging parents? When had I become this diminished version of myself? I didn't know then that the real test of my endurance was yet to come, or that my birthday, typically a day of small celebrations with David, would reveal the true depth of my new position in this household. What I did know was that something inside me was beginning to shift from hurt to anger, a slow burning ember that would eventually ignite a transformation none of us saw coming. My 63rd birthday arrived on a Tuesday. I woke with a small bubble of hope. Surely today would be different. David had never forgotten my birthday. As a child, he'd make handmade cards with glitter and construction paper. As an adult, he always called first thing in the morning. But Tuesday passed without acknowledgement. No card, no call, not even a happy birthday over breakfast. I told myself he was busy, that he'd remember later. 3 days later, I finally worked up the courage to mention it. David, did you realize Tuesday was my birthday? His face fell, genuine remorse washing over his features. Mom, I'm so sorry. Work has been crazy and… For goodness sake, Margaret. Rachel's voice cut through the room as she entered from the kitchen. You're a grown woman, not a child. Do you really need balloons and cake at your age? I felt as if I'd been slapped. I wasn't expecting a party, just acknowledgement. Rachel sighed dramatically. With all due respect, we're struggling to keep a roof over our heads. Birthday celebrations aren't exactly a priority right now. That night, I accidentally overheard them arguing through the thin walls. She's your mother, David. How could you forget her birthday? Rachel's voice was accusatory. I've been distracted with the mortgage situation, he responded, sounding defeated. Well, she's making me feel like the villain here. We're drowning financially. And she's upset about a birthday card? We can't keep doing this. 3 people in this apartment is too much. What are you suggesting? David's voice dropped. She's my mother. She sold her house to move here. And I'm your wife. Who comes first in your life, David? Her or me? His response was too quiet to hear, but the defeat in his voice told me everything. The final blow came the next morning. I found my medical bills spread across the kitchen counter, several items circled in red marker. A yellow sticky note in Rachel's handwriting read, "Generic alternatives exist. Family budget crisis." I confronted David that evening, my hands shaking with anger and humiliation. Those were private medical documents, in my purse. David looked pained but defensive. Mom, Rachel was just trying to help. These brand-name medications are 3 times the cost of generics. That's between me and my doctor, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. My medical decisions aren't up for committee review. We're all making sacrifices, he countered. Rachel packed lunches all week instead of buying them. I canceled my gym membership. And I sold my home of 40 years, I reminded him quietly. For a moment, I saw recognition in his eyes, a flash of the sun I'd raised, but it vanished quickly, replaced by the conflict-avoidant man who couldn't stand up to his wife or protect his mother. That weekend, I visited my doctor to ask about generic alternatives, only to learn that for my specific condition, certain brand-name medications were significantly more effective. Your health has actually declined since our last visit, Dr. Hayes noted, concern etching her features. Your blood pressure is elevated, and there's increased inflammation in your joints. Is everything okay at home, Margaret? I couldn't bring myself to admit the truth. Instead, I nodded and blinked back tears. Just adjusting to some changes, I managed. As I left the clinic, clutching my unchanged prescriptions, I realized I was at a crossroads. I could continue diminishing myself to fit into their space, sacrificing my health and dignity. Or I could find another way. What I didn't know yet was that the answer had been waiting for me all along. Locked in a safety deposit box I'd been too afraid to open since Robert's death. A box containing not just financial documents, but the key to my liberation. As February continued, the Massachusetts winter intensified, bringing even more bitter cold. One particularly frigid morning, I woke to find my room like an icebox, my breath visible in the air. My fingers, stiff and painful from arthritis, could barely grip my phone to check the temperature, 58 degrees. I shuffled to the thermostat, confused to find it deliberately set so low. When I adjusted it, the display flashed, "Override not permitted." At breakfast, I asked about the heating situation. "Oh, we implemented a new energy conservation system," Rachel explained, sipping her coffee. "Your room gets plenty of southern exposure, so it doesn't need as much heat during the day." "I was freezing all night," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "My arthritis gets worse in the cold. We're all making sacrifices." Margaret, her smile never reached her eyes. The heating bill last month was astronomical. David and I turned our heat down too. Later, I noticed their bedroom vent pumping out warm air while mine remained cold, another lie in their growing collection. That afternoon, searching for an extra blanket in the hall closet, I accidentally knocked over a stack of mail. As I gathered the scattered envelopes, one caught my eye. A final warning notice from First National Bank regarding their mortgage. They were 2 payments behind, with foreclosure proceedings scheduled to begin in 30 days. Suddenly, the invitation to move in, the pressure to sell my house, the constant complaints about money, it all made terrible sense. I wasn't family, I was a financial solution. The situation reached breaking point that evening when Rachel's parents came for dinner. I'd spent hours preparing a pot roast despite my aching hands. As we sat down, Rachel introduced me. "This is Margaret, our temporary tenant who's helping with expenses while we renovate." I froze, fork midway to my mouth. "How sensible." Her mother nodded approvingly. "That spare bedroom was always too large anyway. Good to see you're monetizing the extra space." David said nothing, studying his plate intensely. After Rachel's parents left, I confronted them both. "Tenant? Is that what I am to you?" "Mom, she didn't mean—" "Stop making excuses for her, David." My voice rose, despite my efforts to control it. "For weeks, I've been treated like an unwelcome intruder. The temperature in my room, my private medical records searched, my food labeled and restricted, and now I discover you're facing foreclosure. Was this the plan all along? Move in your mother to help pay your mortgage?" Rachel's face hardened. "Someone had to be practical. We're drowning financially. And yes, having you contribute to utilities and groceries helps." "What's wrong with that arrangement?" "The dishonesty is what's wrong," I said, my voice breaking. "You should have told me the truth from the beginning." "Would you have come if we had?" David finally spoke, his voice small. The question hung in the air between us. Would I have? The sad truth was that I probably would have, just to be near my only child. But I would have entered the arrangement with open eyes, not as a victim of manipulation. "I'm leaving tomorrow," I said quietly. "Mom, please, we can work this out." David's voice held panic now. "Where will you go?" Rachel asked, her tone suggesting she didn't really care. "Back to my home. I haven't closed on the sale yet." That night, as I packed my few belongings, my hands shook, not from arthritis pain, but from a cocktail of emotions I could barely name: humiliation, betrayal, and beneath it all, a simmering anger that would soon transform into something more powerful than any of us could imagine. I didn't know it yet, but my real journey was just beginning, and the path ahead would require a strength I didn't know I possessed. The real estate agent was surprisingly happy when I asked her to take my house off the market. "The market's been slow anyway," she explained, "and between us, your house is worth more than we listed it for." Returning to my empty home felt like both defeat and relief. The few pieces of furniture I hadn't sold, my bed, a reading chair, the kitchen table, seemed to float in the vacant spaces. But the silence was golden. No cold stares, no whispered arguments about my presence, no thermostat wars. Eleanor returned from her cross-country trip and came over immediately, her face creasing with concern as I recounted the past 2 months. "You should have called me sooner," she scolded gently, unpacking groceries she'd brought. "I would have come back." "I was embarrassed," I admitted. What kind of mother doesn't recognize when she's being used by her own child? "A trusting one," Eleanor replied firmly. "Now there's something I've been meaning to ask you, something I've tried to bring up several times over the past few years." She hesitated. "Have you ever checked Robert's safety deposit box at the bank?" I froze. "How did you know about that?" Eleanor's expression softened. "Robert called me the week before he died. He made me promise to make sure you eventually looked in that box. I've tried to mention it a few times over the years, but you always changed the subject. You weren't ready to face anything that reminded you too strongly of him." She was right. I'd avoided anything that made Robert's absence more real, especially financial matters that had been his territory in our marriage. The following morning, with Eleanor by my side, I entered First National Bank for the first time since Robert's funeral 5 years ago. The manager, Mr. Collins, recognized me immediately. "Mrs. Wilson, it's been quite a while." The safety deposit box was larger than I remembered. My hands trembled as I inserted the key, not from arthritis but from apprehension. What had Robert kept from me? Inside were stacks of documents, property deeds, insurance policies, investment portfolios. As I sifted through them, the truth emerged like a landscape after fog lifts. Robert had quietly built a small real estate empire over our decades together. 3 income properties in Massachusetts, 1 in Rhode Island, Mr. Collins explained, reviewing the documents, all managed by Beacon Property Management, and several investment accounts that have continued growing since Mr. Wilson's passing. "I don't understand," I whispered. "We lived so modestly, and our accountant never mentioned Mr. Peterson has been following explicit instructions," Mr. Collins explained. "Robert was always very clear about this arrangement. He believed in living within reasonable means, regardless of wealth. He used to say that money should provide security, not lifestyle inflation." At the bottom of the box lay a sealed envelope with my name in Robert's handwriting. I opened it with unsteady fingers. "My dearest Margaret, if you're reading this, you've finally been forced to face our financial situation. Forgive me for not sharing all this while I was alive. You always said numbers made you anxious, and I wanted to protect you from worry. But there was another reason. I grew up watching my parents flaunt their wealth, only to lose everything in the recession of '79. They never recovered, financially or emotionally. I swore I would build security differently, quietly, steadily, without letting it change who we were. I've built a safety net for you. David has always been our pride, but also our concern. Since childhood, he's sought approval in ways that make him vulnerable to manipulation. You especially could never deny him anything, even when a no would have been better for him. This is my final gift, financial independence to live your golden years with dignity, not dependent on the uncertain kindness of others. Use it wisely. With eternal love, Robert." Tears streamed down my face as I finished reading. 5 years I'd lived in financial uncertainty when all along. "How much?" I finally asked Mr. Collins. When he showed me the total value of the properties and investments, I nearly fell out of my chair. "I'm wealthy?" The word felt foreign on my tongue. "Quite comfortably situated," he confirmed with a smile. That night, as Eleanor and I shared a bottle of wine at my kitchen table, an idea began forming. Not of revenge, but of a necessary lesson that might save not just me, but my son's character as well. "I need recommendations," I told Eleanor. "A good attorney, a financial advisor, and the best rheumatologist in Boston. It's time I took control of every aspect of my life." As I spoke, I felt something shift inside me, a straightening of my spine, a lifting of my shoulders. For the first time in years, perhaps decades, I wasn't just Robert's widow or David's mother. I was Margaret Wilson, and Margaret Wilson had work to do. A week after discovering my unexpected wealth, David called. His voice carried the hollow tone of defeat. "Mom, I owe you an explanation and an apology. The bank is foreclosing on our apartment. We have 90 days before they take legal action." He paused. "Rachel and I are considering moving to Ohio or Indiana, where the cost of living is lower." I listened silently, noting how different my reaction was from what it would have been just weeks ago. Instead of immediate offers of help, I asked calculated questions about the exact amount of their debt, the bank's timeline, Their employment prospects. That sounds incredibly difficult, I finally said, my voice neutral. Could you email me the mortgage details, just so I understand the situation better? After hanging up, I called Mr. Peterson, who had been managing Robert's finances all these years. I need a recommendation for a discreet, efficient real estate attorney, I explained. 2 days later, I sat across from Mr. Jenkins, a sharp-eyed attorney in his 60s, in his downtown Boston office. I laid out my plan, watching his expression shift from skepticism to intrigue. Let me understand correctly, he said, leaning forward. You want to create an investment company that conceals your identity, purchase your son's apartment during foreclosure proceedings, and become his landlord, without him knowing it's you? Precisely. This is unusual, Mrs. Wilson. Is it legal? I asked directly. Entirely legal. Yes, many investors use corporate structures to protect their privacy, and with the bank's rapid resolution program, we could avoid public auction entirely. He tapped his pen thoughtfully. But establishing the company structure, creating the necessary privacy shields, negotiating with the bank, this will take time. We're talking weeks, possibly months. The bank gave my son 90 days before formal foreclosure begins. Is that enough time? More than sufficient. He studied me with new respect. May I ask, why not simply help your son directly? You could offer financial assistance with conditions attached. I met his gaze steadily. I've tried setting boundaries with David his entire life. I've tried gentle conversations, direct confrontations, even written agreements when he borrowed money in the past. Nothing has worked. He always finds a way to circumvent the limits I set, and I always give in. This situation requires something more structural. With the legal plan in motion, creating Horizon Investments LLC, with multiple layers of privacy protection, I turned my attention to personal transformation. Dr. Levine, Boston's top rheumatologist, reviewed my medical history with concern. Your previous treatment was inadequate for your condition. I recommend a more aggressive approach, biologic medications combined with specialized physical therapy. Will I improve? I asked directly. We can likely reduce your pain by 40 to 60% and improve mobility significantly. But it will take time. Think months, not weeks. It won't be a cure, and you'll have good days and bad days, but you should see substantial improvement gradually. I threw myself into the treatment regimen with determination. 3 times weekly, I endured physical therapy sessions that left me exhausted but gradually stronger. The new medications, the very ones Rachel had criticized as too expensive, began slowly reducing the inflammation in my joints. Simultaneously, I contracted a home renovation company specializing in adaptive modifications for people with mobility issues. While I attended my medical appointments and worked with Mr. Jenkins on the Horizon investment structure, they began transforming my house into a space that would accommodate my physical limitations while reflecting my newfound sense of self. I also enrolled in courses at the local community college, Personal Finance for Seniors, and Introduction to Real Estate Investment. Knowledge, I was discovering, was its own form of power. During my regular conversations with David, I carefully noted details he mentioned: his work schedule, regular appointments, social patterns. This intelligence gathering would prove crucial for timing my eventual revelation. Rachel, I discovered through David's occasional mentions, maintained an active social media presence that inadvertently revealed much about her own schedule and commitments. Eleanor accompanied me to a high-end clothing boutique specializing in adaptive fashion for people with mobility challenges. I purchased several elegant outfits in deep blues and purples, colors I'd always loved but rarely wore. You look like a different person, Eleanor remarked as I tried on a tailored blazer that concealed the compression sleeves supporting my elbows. I'm becoming a different person, I corrected her. Or perhaps I'm becoming who I always was, beneath the roles of wife and mother. Some might call this revenge, Eleanor commented one evening as she helped me review corporate documents for Horizon Investments. I prefer to think of it as education, I replied, signing the final authorization form. The most valuable lessons often come from unexpected teachers. 8 weeks after my discovery in the safety deposit box, the foundation of my plan was set. My body was responding gradually to treatment. My knowledge of finance and real estate was growing daily, and Horizon Investments LLC was officially incorporated with Mr. Jenkins as the public-facing representative. The trap I had once stumbled into was about to become a lesson none of us would ever forget. 8 intense weeks passed as Mr. Jenkins established Horizon Investments LLC, creating layers of corporate protection to conceal my identity as the true owner. Meanwhile, I adhered rigorously to my medical regimen, feeling incrementally stronger each day as inflammation slowly decreased in my joints. "Your progress is promising," my physical therapist noted during one session. "But remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint. You'll have setbacks along with improvements." I received occasional calls from David, each revealing more desperation as the foreclosure deadline approached. While his earlier revelation about their financial troubles confirmed what I'd accidentally discovered in that stack of mail, these conversations provided specific details I needed for my plan. Finally, 2 weeks before the bank's deadline, David received an unexpected call from a law firm representing Horizon Investments, a company specializing in distressed properties. The offer was surprisingly generous: full payment of the mortgage plus $10,000, with the condition that David and Rachel could remain as tenants paying below market rent. "It's an opportunity to start fresh without crushing debt," Mr. Jenkins explained over the phone as I listened on the extension. "Our client sees potential in this neighborhood and is willing to make arrangements beneficial to both parties." David accepted immediately, desperate and relieved. Rachel, however, was more suspicious. "Something seems too good to be true," she told David in a call he later recounted to me. "I've researched this company online, and they have a website and some press mentions, but their history seems suspiciously thin." She dug deeper, investigating Horizon Investments with her typical thoroughness. Mr. Jenkins had anticipated this, ensuring that the corporate front appeared legitimate and consistent. He had established a convincing digital footprint with press releases, a professional website, and business registrations that revealed nothing about the actual ownership structure. Rachel spent hours researching Horizon, David told me later. She even called 2 other properties supposedly owned by them. The tenants confirmed they were managed by Beacon Property Management on behalf of Horizon. These were, of course, legitimate calls to the very properties Robert had owned and left to me, now rebranded under the Horizon umbrella. The circular verification was perfect. Nevertheless, Rachel's extensive online searches found nothing concerning, and ultimately, their desperation outweighed her suspicions. "At this point," David told me, "we can't be picky. This company seems legitimate, and it's a miracle they're offering terms this generous." The contract signing was scheduled at Mr. Jenkins' elegant downtown office. Through his special arrangement, I observed the meeting via the firm's internal video system from an adjacent private room. I watched with complex emotions as my son signed the documents, relief visible on his face. Rachel sat beside him, simultaneously reassured and wary, her eyes repeatedly scanning the contract as if searching for hidden traps. "Phase 1 complete," Mr. Jenkins murmured, joining me in the observation room. "They have no idea they're now your tenants. The bank receives payment tomorrow, and property transfer will be completed within 3 business days." I nodded, my expression serene despite the emotional storm within. "When is the initial property inspection scheduled?" "Next week. Our owner's representative will visit to assess the apartment's condition." "Perfect," I replied, a small smile forming. "I can't wait to see their faces when they realize who that representative is." The following week, I completed my transformation. While my physical therapy sessions had improved my posture and mobility, I was still far from cured. The new medications had reduced my inflammation, but I still needed a cane on most days. Yet even this limitation became part of my new image. I visited a high-end salon where my gray hair was cut into a stylish, modern bob. An image consultant helped me select sophisticated eyeglass frames that complemented my face. I chose clothing that projected authority, a navy blue suit with adaptive features that accommodated my physical limitations while appearing completely conventional. To complete my renewed appearance, I carefully pinned the silver and sapphire butterfly brooch Robert had given me for our 30th anniversary to my lapel, a distinctive piece Rachel had once dismissively called too outdated to wear outside family gatherings. In the mirror, I barely recognized myself, not just from the external changes, but from the confidence radiating from within. This is who I always was, I thought. I just forgot for a while. On inspection day, nervousness fluttered in my stomach, but determination prevailed. Mr. Jenkins accompanied me to the building, but waited in the car. Remember, legally, you're in an impeccable position. You're the owner, they're the tenants. I took a deep breath, adjusted the butterfly brooch, and rang the doorbell. Rachel answered. The woman who opened the door was expecting a corporate representative, her face composed into a professionally pleasant expression. Between my new hairstyle, different glasses, elegant attire, erect posture, and the dramatic shift in my demeanor from subservient to authoritative, she didn't immediately connect me to the hunched, defeated woman who had left their apartment weeks earlier. But then her eyes fixed on the butterfly brooch, the distinctive piece she had commented on so dismissively, and recognition dawned on her face in stages: confusion, disbelief, and finally, shock. "Margaret? What are you doing here?" With studied calmness, I extended a business card and replied, "Good afternoon, Rachel. I'm Margaret Phillips, representing the owner of Horizon Investments. I'm here for the scheduled inspection." "This must be some kind of joke," Rachel stammered, her face paling as she accepted my business card mechanically. "I assure you it's not," I replied calmly. "May I come in? The inspection shouldn't take long." She stepped aside wordlessly, her composure shattered. David looked up from his laptop, his expression shifting from confusion to shock as he recognized my voice. "Mom? What's going on? What do you have to do with Horizon Investments?" I entered with measured steps, the elegant ebony cane I now used more for style than necessity, tapping softly against the hardwood floors. With deliberate movements, I opened my leather portfolio and extracted the property documents. "I don't merely have something to do with Horizon Investments, David. I am Horizon Investments." I allowed the statement to hang in the air before continuing. "Perhaps we should sit down to discuss the terms of your tenancy." The conversation that followed was surreal. David alternated between disbelief, shame, and dawning respect as he grasped the extent of what I had orchestrated. Rachel remained mostly silent, her expressions cycling through shock, anger, and finally a reluctant acknowledgement. "Let me understand this correctly," David said finally. "You created a company to buy our apartment without us knowing. And now you're our landlord. Yes, your rent will be fair. Below market value, actually. I consider this an investment in multiple ways." I maintained eye contact as I continued. "The lease includes specific clauses about mutual respect and consideration. Violations could result in termination of the rental agreement. You did all this to teach us a lesson?" Rachel's voice held a mixture of resentment and something else, perhaps respect. "I did this to establish boundaries that should have existed long ago," I corrected her, "and to create consequences for actions that had none." Before leaving, I placed an envelope on the coffee table. Robert's letter from the safety deposit box. "Read this together. It might help you understand that true love involves setting healthy boundaries, not enabling destructive patterns." As I walked toward the elevator, I heard David calling my name. I turned to see him running down the hallway, tears in his eyes. "Mom, I don't know what to say." "Then don't say anything, David. Not yet. Read the letter. Think about everything that's happened. We'll talk when you're ready." The elevator doors closed on the image of my son standing in the hallway, looking simultaneously smaller and more grown up than I'd ever seen him. In the weeks that followed, I maintained professional distance while David made nearly daily attempts at reconciliation. His texts and voicemails evolved from defensive justifications to genuine reflection. "I never realized how I've taken your generosity for granted," one message admitted. Dad was right about me in his letter. I responded with polite acknowledgement, but refused to slip back into our old patterns. All communications about the apartment went through proper channels, meaning Mr. Jenkins or the property management company I'd hired. Meanwhile, my physical transformation continued. The aggressive treatment protocol showed gradual improvement. I could now hold a teacup with less pain, and my stride grew more confident week by week, though I still had days when the arthritis flared painfully. I retrieved my belongings from storage, integrating cherished art pieces and family albums into my renovated home. Horizon Investments expanded beyond the initial plan when, with Mr. Jenkins' guidance and the expertise of professional investment advisors, I acquired 2 additional properties in emerging Boston neighborhoods. The original income properties that Robert had owned continued to be managed by Beacon Property Management, providing a stable foundation for my growing portfolio. Recognizing my limitations and the complexity of property management, I relied heavily on Beacon's expertise for day-to-day operations, while I focused on strategic decisions, always consulting with professional advisors for the technical aspects of real estate investment. During our conversations, David inadvertently revealed details about his and Rachel's schedules, work commitments, social engagements, regular appointments. Rachel's public social media accounts provided additional insights into their routines. This information allowed me to strategically time my inspections and communications for maximum impact. 3 months after the acquisition, I received the first rent payment precisely on schedule. The transaction brought not the satisfaction of revenge, but something more complex and fulfilling: respect. For the first time in decades, my son saw me not just as mom, but as a complete, capable woman worthy of consideration. The true test of this new dynamic came unexpectedly when Rachel appeared at my door one spring morning, clutching a bouquet and an invitation to lunch. Her expression held something I'd never seen before: genuine humility. 6 months into my new role as landlord, I decided to host a formal dinner party at my renovated home. My once modest suburban house had been transformed with the help of an interior designer who specialized in creating elegant, accessible spaces for people with mobility challenges. I invited David and Rachel, along with Eleanor and Mr. Jenkins. The atmosphere crackled with unresolved tension as we gathered around my dining table, served by a private chef I'd hired for the occasion. After appetizers, David finally asked the question that had clearly been consuming him. "Why, Mom? Why go through this elaborate scheme instead of just helping us directly when we were desperate?" I placed my fork deliberately beside my plate and met his gaze. Because money without learning would have been a temporary bandage over a deep wound. For years, even before your father's death, we established a pattern. I gave, you received, without true balance. "We deserved it," Rachel interjected, tears in her eyes, "especially me." "This isn't about deserving punishment," I replied firmly. "It's about growth, about recognizing that relationships, like contracts, must be based on mutual respect. When you treated me as a burden, Rachel, and when you allowed it, David, you broke an unwritten family contract." The conversation deepened as painful truths emerged. David confessed how he had taken my generosity for granted since childhood. "I knew exactly what expression would get me what I wanted from you. Dad called me the little actor when you weren't around." Rachel described how her own dysfunctional family history had programmed her to see any maternal figure as a threat. "My mother constantly criticized me, then bought expensive gifts as compensation. I learned that love and cruelty went hand in hand. Without realizing it, I reproduced that pattern with you." Eleanor and Mr. Jenkins offered perspectives as outside observers, enriching our understanding of family dynamics and power imbalances. As the evening progressed, something new emerged from the ruins of our old relationship: the possibility of more authentic, balanced connections. By dessert, I revealed my final decision. "The apartment will remain under my ownership, but I'm amending my will, with conditions." I explained that David and Rachel would eventually inherit the property, but only if they demonstrated consistent change in the coming years. More importantly, I established clear boundaries for my future involvement in their lives. I would be mother and mother-in-law, but never again a figure to be exploited or diminished. True revenge isn't making others suffer as you suffered. It's ensuring they can never make you suffer in the same way again. As they left that evening, David embraced me with a new respect in his eyes. "I never knew you could be so formidable." "I always was," I replied softly. "You just never needed to see that part of me before." In the following months, I watched with quiet satisfaction as both David and Rachel began therapy, separately and together. Through casual conversations, I learned they were addressing their patterns of entitlement and insecurity, slowly building a healthier relationship. My real estate portfolio, managed primarily by Beacon Property Management with oversight from financial advisors, began to grow modestly. The 4 original income properties that Robert had left, 3 in Massachusetts and 1 in Rhode Island, continued to provide steady income under Beacon's management, forming the foundation of my financial security. While I was developing knowledge through my community college courses, I was realistic about my limitations and relied heavily on professionals for the technical aspects of property management and investment. 3 months ago, David found a better paying position, while Rachel returned to complete the master's degree she had abandoned. Their finances gradually stabilized, and they paid their rent punctually without resentment. My medical condition, while chronic, responded gradually to proper treatment. The combination of advanced biologic medications, regular physical therapy, and an adapted exercise regimen developed specifically for rheumatoid arthritis showed steady improvement over time, allowing me to regain about 60% mobility in my hands, with continuing challenges during flare-ups. Beacon Property Management handled the day-to-day operations of my growing real estate portfolio, allowing me to focus on strategic decisions and my personal well-being. I'd resumed old passions, adapted painting classes, accommodating my physical limitations, and a book club that now met monthly in my living room. Last week, I received a small package containing the keys to the apartment and a handwritten note: "To the true owner of this home and our hearts, thank you for the hardest, most necessary lesson of our lives. With renewed love and genuine respect, David and Rachel." Attached was a formal invitation to dinner where they wished to present a proposal. They wanted to buy the apartment, not as a gift, but as a legitimate business transaction with fair monthly payments. "We want to build our estate through honesty and work, not manipulation or exploitation. You taught us that." As I sat at my desk, running my fingers over the keys, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not the satisfaction of revenge, but the peace of redemption. On a crisp autumn evening, exactly 1 year after I'd revealed myself as Horizon Investments' owner, I stood in my kitchen preparing tea when the doorbell rang. David and Rachel stood on my porch, looking nervous but determined. "We need to talk, Mom," David said. "Really talk." I ushered them into my living room, now filled with the art and mementos I'd reclaimed from storage. The space reflected my transformed identity: elegant, accessible, and unapologetically mine. Rachel spoke first, her usual confidence replaced with genuine vulnerability. "We've been in therapy for 9 months now, both individually and together. There's something I need to say to you, Margaret." She took a deep breath. "I was cruel to you because I was terrified of you. Not the you who moved into our apartment, but what you represented: unconditional love, something I never had from my own mother." David reached for her hand as she continued. "My mother's approval always came with conditions, with criticism. When I saw how David treasured you, how he spoke about you, I didn't know how to compete with that bond. So instead of trying to understand it, I tried to destroy it." Her honesty surprised me. "That's insightful, Rachel." "Therapy," she said with a small smile. "Expensive, but effective." David leaned forward. "Mom, I've been examining why I allowed Rachel to treat you that way. Dr. Berkowitz helped me see how I've spent my life avoiding conflict at any cost, even at the cost of betraying people I love. Your father saw that tendency in you early," I said softly. "It worried him." "He was right to worry." David's voice cracked. "I became so comfortable in the role of peacemaker that I lost my moral compass. I chose the path of least resistance instead of the path of integrity." We talked for hours, moving from surface apologies to deeper explorations of family patterns. I shared how Robert and I had disagreed about parenting approaches, my tendency to protect David from consequences versus Robert's belief in necessary struggles. "You both needed different things from me than what I gave," I admitted. "Robert needed a partner who would help instill accountability. You, David, needed boundaries that would help you develop internal strength." As our conversation deepened, Rachel revealed something unexpected. "I've been corresponding with my mother about our relationship patterns. It's been difficult but necessary. She's even agreed to join us for a therapy session next month." "That takes courage," I acknowledged, seeing her in a new light. The transformation in Rachel wasn't complete or seamless. Throughout our conversation, I noticed moments when her old defensiveness surfaced briefly, a tightening around her eyes when certain topics arose, a shift in posture when she felt vulnerable. These were reminders that real change happens gradually, with setbacks along the way. In fact, just last week, we'd had a serious setback during a phone call about holiday plans. When I mentioned potentially visiting my sister in Vermont instead of joining them for Thanksgiving, Rachel's voice had turned cold. "Of course you'd choose your sister over us." "Typical," she'd snapped, "after everything we've done to try to make amends." The old Rachel had surfaced momentarily, defensive, manipulative, quick to position herself as the victim. But what happened next showed her growth. After a brief silence, she'd sighed heavily. "I'm sorry, Margaret. That was unfair and manipulative. I felt rejected and reverted to old patterns. Please make whatever plans feel right to you. The invitation stands if you want to join us, but there's no obligation or guilt trip attached. This ability to recognize and correct her behavior gave me hope for genuine, lasting change. Finally, David brought up the purpose of their visit. We've made a decision about the apartment. We want to buy it from you, not as a gift, but as a legitimate business transaction. Rachel nodded. We've been saving for a down payment. It would be a 15-year mortgage, but we've calculated that we can manage it while still continuing therapy and my education. This isn't about ownership in itself, David explained. It's about earning something through honest effort rather than manipulation, about creating our future with integrity. I studied them both, noting the subtle changes. David's more confident posture, Rachel's less defensive demeanor, the way they communicated with glances instead of tension. I'll consider it, I said finally. But first I'd like regular family dinners for 6 months, not as landlord and tenants, but as family working to rebuild trust. We'll revisit the purchase proposal after that. As they prepared to leave, Rachel hesitated at the door. The butterfly brooch you wore that day, the one I once called outdated. It was beautiful. It suited you perfectly. Thank you, I replied, touched by this small but significant acknowledgement. After they left, I sat in my reading chair, reflecting on our conversation. The road ahead would be neither quick nor easy, but for the first time, it felt like we were all traveling in the same direction. My phone chimed with a text from Eleanor. How did it go? I smiled as I typed my response. Like the first honest conversation we've had in decades. Not perfect, but real. Real was enough for now. Perfect could wait. 2 years have passed since I revealed myself as the owner of Horizon Investments. The calendar on my kitchen wall marks today as special. Closing day on the apartment sale to David and Rachel. My reflection in the bathroom mirror shows a woman transformed from the hunched, pain-riddled person who once moved into their spare room. At 64, I stand straighter, my silver hair styled in an elegant bob, my hands, while still occasionally stiff, capable and stronger than before. The treatment plan Dr. Levine prescribed has been effective, though not miraculous. Rheumatoid arthritis remains a constant companion, with good days and bad. My daily medication regimen is still essential, and some mornings my fingers struggle with buttons and zippers. On particularly difficult days, the pain reminds me that this is a chronic condition I'll manage for the rest of my life. But I've learned to balance activity with rest, to recognize my limits without being limited by them. Horizon Investments has grown modestly beyond my initial vision. With 3 properties now in my portfolio and Beacon Property Management handling day-to-day operations, I've discovered an unexpected interest in real estate investment. The 4 original income properties that Robert had left, 3 in Massachusetts and 1 in Rhode Island, continued to provide steady income under Beacon's management, forming the foundation of my financial security. I completed a certificate program in property management last spring. Though I continue to rely heavily on financial advisors and property management professionals for the technical aspects of the business, my role is primarily strategic, identifying potential investments and making final decisions after receiving expert advice, rather than handling the complex day-to-day operations myself. The past 2 years brought gradual healing to our family. The 6 months of weekly dinners I requested extended indefinitely, becoming a tradition we all value. These gatherings evolved from awkward attempts at conversation to genuine connections, each of us learning to communicate with newfound honesty. David, now 38, continued therapy, confronting his conflict avoidance and people-pleasing tendencies. His career flourished once he found the courage to stand up for his ideas at work. 6 months ago, he received a substantial promotion that accelerated their mortgage savings plan. Rachel, 36, completed her master's degree in architectural design and started a small consulting business specializing in accessible home modifications. Inspired, she admitted, by watching how my renovated home balanced aesthetics with practicality. Her relationship with her mother remains complicated but is slowly improving through joint therapy sessions. Rachel's transformation has been the most surprising and the least linear. There have been setbacks and moments when her old patterns resurface, especially during times of stress. Just 3 months ago, during a disagreement about holiday plans, I glimpsed the old Rachel briefly in a cutting remark she quickly apologized for. Real change, I've learned, isn't about perfection, but about awareness and correction. As I drive to the closing at Mr. Jenkins' office, I reflect on how my revenge transformed into something entirely different, a catalyst for growth none of us anticipated. The purchase agreement we're signing today isn't the one David and Rachel initially proposed. After lengthy discussions, we created something more meaningful. They're buying 80% of the apartment, while I retain 20% as a silent partner. A permanent reminder, as David put it, that we're building on the foundation you created. The closing proceeds smoothly, Mr. Jenkins guiding us through the documentation with practiced efficiency. When the final papers are signed, David hands me something unexpected, a small velvet box. Inside rests a modern silver pendant shaped like a key, inlaid with tiny sapphires that echo my butterfly brooch. It's from both of us, Rachel explains, her voice soft. A symbol that you'll always have a place in our home, but on very different terms than before. As we celebrate with lunch afterward, I notice how naturally we've settled into new roles. The wounded mother, the entitled son, the insecure daughter-in-law. Those characters have been replaced by three adults who respect each other's boundaries and value each other's strengths. That evening, Eleanor joins me for wine on my back patio, which has become my favorite spot for reflection. The garden I planted last spring has flourished, much like my unexpected new life. Did you ever imagine things would turn out this way? She asks, gesturing toward the framed photo on the side table, a recent holiday snapshot of me with David and Rachel, all of us laughing genuinely. Never, I admit. I thought I was teaching them a lesson, but we all ended up learning something different than I expected. Robert would be proud, she says quietly, not just of how you used the resources he left, but of how you found your voice. I nod, thinking of the letter I keep in my desk drawer, its edges worn from repeated readings. In his final gift, Robert saw what I couldn't, that financial security was only valuable if it came with the strength to stand on my own. My phone chimes with a text from David, hanging the new living room art tomorrow. Your design advice needed, if you're free around 11? I smile as I type my response. I'll be there, bringing coffee and professional opinions. The Margaret who would have dropped everything to help, who would have arrived with homemade muffins and desperate need for approval, is gone. In her place is a woman who knows her value, who gives from choice rather than necessity, who loves without diminishing herself. The bitterness of those early months has mellowed into something unexpected, not just forgiveness, but gratitude for the painful awakening that forced me to discover my own strength. My silent revenge succeeded beyond anything I could have imagined, not by punishing those who hurt me, but by transforming us all in the process. As darkness falls and the first stars appear, I raise my glass in a private toast to Robert, to Eleanor, to the winding path that led me here, and most of all, to myself, the woman I was always meant to be. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel and don't miss the next video, with more stories that will touch your heart.